IVM.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Geek Fruit Podcast. Today it's me, Tejas and Jishnu.
Hello.
Hey, so Jishnu, today we're going to be talking about one of our favorite characters from non-fiction television.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is
Yeah,
non-fiction.
and he's one of our favorites.
Because he makes fiction
Does he?
in
Okay.
the non-fiction world.
We're gonna dive into
It's
that
great.
a little more, obviously, in this episode. Today we're going to be talking about Darren Brown, who's definitely up there in terms of some of the best, like, mentalists. Is that what he calls? What he calls
Yep.
himself? A
Mentalist and illusionist.
a psychological illusionist.
Yes.
Which is really, really exciting. I mean, he does some of the most mind-blowing stuff. I used to enjoy some of this stuff back when we were in school, like Chris Angel and all these guys doing all their, magic and weird. I mean, Chris Angel is pretty weird. We should do an episode just generally on, like, some more mentalism and stuff. But Darren Brown is definitely up there because apart from being an excellent illusionist and, a mentalist and stuff, he's extremely charming British man.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just fantastic to watch and to listen to. And he's just really captivating. So that makes his job obviously much more exciting to watch. So before we dive into mentalism and Darren Brown, let us go through some email.
Friends.
Yeah. So shall I begin?
Okay.
Yeah? Okay, cool. So our first mail is from Salman Kareem, frequent mailer. Dr. Salman Kareem.
All right.
All right, Doctor. He says, hi, my nerd bros. The episode 176, The Bad Guys, is a great episode, but I feel you have just skimmed the top. This is true for all our episodes.
Yeah. I mean,
You can have part 1 or part 2 or even multiple parts, I think, to talk about Bad Guys, and you should have done an episode that covers our own Bollywood, including Gabbar, Mogambo, Rahul. Rahul from Bazigar, I want to say? Yeah, I think so, yeah. Naam to suna hoga, yes. Alright, in the TV series, my favorite is undoubtedly Walter White. Moriarty, we spoke about Walter White, of course.
Yeah.
Moriarty of Sherlock BBC comes a close second, but there is the Game of Thrones where we can actually fill an entire episode talking about the baddies. Funny, you don't even mention the series. I think that's probably why, because the whole show is about shitting on the heroes in the first 6 seasons, pretty much.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, and it's a Game of Thrones. Funny, you don't even mention the series. In movies, there are many memorable ones, like The Joker, Hans Landa. We spoke about Hans Landa.
we did. Quite a bit.
Thanos, but I loved Leonardo DiCaprio and Django Unchained.
Mm-hmm.
That's pure, unadulterated villainy. True, very true. In Disney, Jafar of Aladdin deserves a special mention, and in MCU, Hela in Ragnarok was good too. Was she good? She was Kate Blanchett.
She was, yeah.
That's it, I think.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, she wasn't the strongest villain.
It was a really good performance of a vaguely forgettable character. for me.
She hammed it up.
Yeah, I mean, she did a good job with what she had, and I think what she had wasn't that good.
I will say this. I think she is scarier in about 30 seconds as evil Galadriel in Lord of the Rings.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Than she is in that entire movie.
That was nuts when that happened.
Right? Yeah, like, I think catches everyone off guard. All right. Strong female antagonists in comics are rare. That's why he says that.
That's fair.
Yeah. I mean, is any strong female villain coming to mind?
Not really.
Maybe not at the moment.
Is there a lady Skeletor? I don't think
I mean,
so.
there can be a gender-bent version of anything. But as far as henchmen are concerned, Boba Fett can be considered one. Yes? Right?
Whose henchman is he?
He's his own man, dog.
Yeah, I don't know who he's henching.
He's a bounty hunter being paid by
Right.
Darth Vader. Him, Bosk, all those guys.
But then I don't think every bounty hunter is considered a henchman.
He's not a henchman. Yeah, he's his own dude.
A bounty hunter is a contractor.
He's a contract killer. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Like Hitman.
He's a freelancer.
He's
an independent artist.
He's a freelancer. He has to send invoices just like the rest of us. These are my views. Need more baddie episodes. Stay connected, North. I think we have really given everybody an opportunity now to say you should make more episodes of the same because we've done so many sub-series.
I guess.
Yeah.
It's a thing now.
Okay, fine. I'm not
like
opposed
things.
to. We like things. All right. What's the next mail, Jishnu?
We have one from a Mr. Pandu, first name Andu.
Andu Pandu? That is his name.
But I think my favorite thing about this is that the email address is from Yahoo.
Oh, classic.
It's been a minute.
Classic.
It's been a minute. Hey, you guys, this is the first time I'm writing to you all. Keep up the great work. I was just listening to the Villains episode, and the whole time I was talk about Game of Thrones. It's got so many great villains, if you can call them that, which is the problem, as we said. It's like, I don't
Was there a
see
reason why we skipped Game of Thrones? Is that because it's always being talked about?
Yeah,
Now
that's
even more so than ever now since it's coming out.
Yeah,
again.
exactly. Like I'm relishing the silence
Yeah.
while it's
Yes,
around. You know what I mean?
absolutely.
Like,
So true. Nail on head.
but anyway, he's got a nice handy dandy little list. Bullet points, people.
They're very good.
And this is a good list of bullet points. Number 1, straight up asshole, Joffrey and the genius of Jack Gleason. Number 2, Tywin. He's a bad guy, but his charisma and gravitas make you think he's not. Number 3, the scariest henchman of them all, Gregor Clegane, the Mountain. Number 4, Jaime, who starts off as a villain and turns into an ambivalent loser. Ambivalent loser?
Yeah.
Sure.
Ambivalent losers.
Yeah.
Is up there.
Number 5, Cersei, enough said. Number 6, the Greyjoys. Wildlings were villains at some point and not and again.
Yeah, the first were when
okay.
the Night's Watch goes to approach Mance Rayder.
Number 7, and obviously the biggest threat and also the most boring, the Night King and his dead army.
Boring?
I think they're boring. Yeah, I think they're boring.
What? I mean, boring because they don't have much dialogue, but they're very villainous.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
oh
but
my
they're
God.
like they're the
Hardhome?
dead and Walking Dead.
Yeah, but Hardhome is like one of my favorite episodes, and that's because of how scary they are. Because they don't say anything. I think that's sometimes a little even more scary.
It is. But
okay, fine. Just
it gets old. It gets old.
This repeated request of having not mentioned Game of Thrones, which is the scariest villain on Game of Thrones. Go.
For me,
yes,
scariest villain, Tywin.
Tywin was great.
Yeah.
But his death kind of undercuts that.
It does. But I mean, it's like I said on our episode about villains, I said that I think what makes a great villain is somebody that can just like deliver lines.
He's a
more than
British.
like what superpower do you have? It's just like, can you just say words and make me feel scared?
It's that Jeremy Irons vibe.
Exactly.
Yeah, solid.
But Undo continues. Let's redo his email. Almost a whole episode on its own. I bet he's never heard that before. Also, I think the henchman in the most recent Mad Max had some personality. True.
The guitar wielding.
Yeah, was he a bass player? I think he was, right?
Yeah, but at least the sounds that were coming out of that. Is that how he had a
hell of a fuzz pedal.
He had a Pog, I think. But anyway, all right. So let us move swiftly from emails. Thank you guys for sending your emails. I'm glad that everybody enjoyed that episode. It was one on our minds for Halloween, so I'm glad we got to do it. Maybe we'll do another next Halloween, or maybe when we run out of things to talk about.
Maybe we'll do it on Tuesday. Okay, so Darren Brown is a guy that I stumbled upon years ago when I was living in England. This would have been 2010 or 11. And he's been around for a hot minute. He's been around for almost 20 years at this point. And if you haven't heard of him, that's because he hasn't really broken out of England until very recently.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Oh.
So he's a no-name in the United States up until like maybe just 6 months ago.
That's insane.
Yeah, because
insane.
The kind of stuff he did was always centered in England, always about setups that he'd played in England. He never took his show really too far outside of the European thing like he did, because he did a lot of live shows. It's not that flashy.
It's like that's the thing.
Well,
it's not that.
Depends on how you.
I know, not content flashy, but like in terms of like, it's not like I mentioned Chris Angel, or who are the other big men like David Blaine doing like absolutely wacky kind of things.
Right.
His was more like where he always like the thing that I love about Darren Brown and his form of hypnotism or mentalism, whatever you want to call it, is that he'd always try to. I mean, I know there's a lot under the surface that we're not seeing, but a lot of it would be him explaining what he does and like how he's doing it. But the brilliance is that even though you know what's happening and he's explaining it to you, you still don't know like how that's possible. Right. And so for that reason, like it didn't feel like he was trying too hard to be like, oh, I can change like the world with this brand of, hypnosis. Like somebody like David Blaine. I mean, David Blaine, is like a little stoned all the time. But like a Chris Angel or any of the other big kind of magicians, it didn't seem very larger than life. In fact, like the people that he would feature on his shows, also just, run of the mill. Average, British folk. And and that was kind of what made it more relatable, but probably why he maybe never made it as big as until just now.
I guess his style of entertainment, I think, fits that differentiation between American blockbuster and British blockbuster in terms of like with a David Blaine, what if it, like some of his biggest things have been, I'm just going to stand here
underwater for 30
or I'm going to be
hours.
Underwater for like 30 hours, or I'm going to stand on this giant pole for like 30 hours, whatever it is. But Darren Brown's is, I'm going to convince somebody to shoot themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a slow burn. Even though it's
huge.
like, what? Seriously? But it's going to take 60 minutes of you like hearing the whole backstory
The
and like
exposition, everything.
blah blah.
good, though.
David Blaine is like, I'm just going to stand here. I know you're going to tune out. We'll just fast forward the footage. And then
you'll be like,
we'll
that's
dramatize the
that's
tits
impressive.
out of the last 15 minutes, basically. And it is impressive.
It's very impressive.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But also, just to continue this comparison, because it's hilarious, David Blaine says very few words, and when he does, it's just always like really stoned.
Yeah, I'm just gonna ask you to turn around and not look, and don't show me the card. I'm not gonna let you show me the card.
Would it freak you out if I threw up a frog right now?
Yeah,
Would that
seriously.
be a thing? Yeah.
I guess it would. And when you say it like that, yeah, probably.
Yeah. but Darren Brown is as like articulate
So
and
amazing.
just a brilliant,
So charming.
just like really, just a really great guy to listen to.
Yeah, superb.
But anyway, so the reason we're bringing him up is because he is now entering the global arena properly.
Good for him.
Yeah, I'm
Very happy.
I was so pleased when I first got wind of it, whatever, a couple of months ago. Like, it just popped up out of nowhere, because when I did discover him when I was in England, I was there for only 2 years, and I think in those 2 years I binged on everything I could.
You ever catch like live or something?
No, I wish, man. But that's his agenda at the moment. So basically, the reason he's relevant right now, once again, is because about 6 months ago he brought back 2 of his pre-existing shows. Two of like, I think 8 or 9 that he has. Mm-hmm. 2 shows came up to Netflix, and now in this past week he's released Sacrifice, which is his new one. Mm-hmm. His first new one in a couple of years. The last one he did was called The Push, which was insane, which I believe came out in like 2015 or 16 or something like that. Not too long ago. And yeah, so if you don't really know much about the guy, basically every show he's done in the last decade or so, he's only put out like one every couple of years. He basically puts them out like albums.
Yeah.
Think about
No,
it. Because
and dude, it must take insane amounts of preparation. And stuff.
He takes almost a year for some of these things to take place, because they're all basically just psychological experiments on people.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And it's insane that people willingly sign up for them.
Yeah,
and get double duped.
They have to sign contracts.
Yeah.
Did you ever watch like the Trick or Treat series? Yeah, man.
Yeah.
So that's like one of my favorite series, where he would like regular average citizens, like they would sign up for this and not know when it's going to happen to them. They would just like say like, yeah, I would love for a Darren Brown experience in Trick or Treat. And they would say, yes, I want to be part of it. And they don't know when in the coming week, month, whatever, it's going to happen. And then suddenly he'll appear super dramatically, like suddenly like he'll appear at a restaurant.
Just in your fridge.
Yeah, or like suddenly they'll like in one which I was watching recently about the guy who becomes a champion at pub quizzes. Because it's something that I'm very happy like to do. I love pub quizzes. I was like, oh shit, I want to know how to do this. But yeah, and he stops the elevator, and then moment he emerges from the elevator, he's like in this kind of hellish kind of thing, and then he signs a contract. And so he kind of offers a choice whether you have to pick 2 cards. One, he'll either trick you, the other one, he'll treat you with a gift of something. And I've seen versions of both. Yeah. And he doesn't reveal to the person until the end which one he's got. So it's pretty insane. If I may give an example of one where there is... Have you seen the episode where he goes to this young lady who is signed up and suddenly appears at a restaurant, and she's like, oh, okay, cool, I guess this is happening now. And he's like, I want you to pick a card. And she picks... And I think she picks Trick. Mm-hmm. And she doesn't know. And he's like, I'm going to teach you how to play. I'm going to make you give a proper concert, a piano recital by the end of this week. And this girl has never played piano in her life. Okay? She's like, he's like, don't worry about it. In a week, I'm going to give you a professional. I've signed you up. The concert is ready. People are going to attend, and you're going to play like a concerto, like for everybody. And she's just like, okay, cool. And he's like, and I'm going to do it without you touching a single note on a piano. And it's insane. So the whole episode unfolds, blah, blah, blah. He's like, he tells us, he's like, okay, these are the techniques, you need to learn, And in the middle, you kind of dive into her own life. She's been like suffering from anxiety, things like that, And she's like, yeah, but I'm willing to commit to this cause, everything like that. And then she reaches the end, and it's like, okay, Koi, you are ready? Are you whatever, you ready? And she's like, yes, I'm ready. And she's like, when you go to the piano, you know what to do. Just feel your way through it. And she sits down, and she just looks at the full house, and she goes and she plays the most incredible, like, performance ever, all right? And then she comes back and she's just like, she's elevated, she's free, she's like, I don't know how this is, she's just not like, she's not reacting like crazily, but she's just like, thank you, you've set me free. And like, I used to have this anxiety and all that stuff. And then it kind of rewinds to like a month before, where so the thing is, she was already a insane piano player, but Darren Brown has tricked her into forgetting all of that history of her playing piano ever in her life. And basically, when he meets her, she has no recollection of it. He's like, I don't know how he's done it. He's done some insane stuff. And so when she plays for the first time, it all comes back, and with the confidence. And, Darren Brown's whole thing is like, he wants to give people hope, and he wants to give people the chance to kind of relive or retell their own stories and stuff like that. In fact, one of his whole specials, Miracles, is about that. So it's an insane thing. And that was a trick. But it's like fantastic, man. I don't know how he does it. Like, he's like, that's just one example of the type of episode I think that, or thing that Darren Brown does excellently. And the way they tell the story is also really well done.
I would highly recommend The Push. That would be my favorite for sure, just because of the way that it's executed.
So well done.
Very much so, from just like what he does in general. He's really good with just manipulating people. That is what he tells people up front he's going to do.
Yeah.
So there's no, like, I wouldn't call it a deception. If you sign up for one of his things, you are doing it with the intention of being
fooled.
Duped.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Right. So a lot of his shows, and we're talking about his tape shows, because he has two kinds of shows. He has a live show and the fictional worlds that he creates. Right.
Yeah.
So The Push is just slightly better, I think, than probably the most absurd production that he's done, which is Apocalypse. Have you seen that?
No, I don't think I've seen that.
He literally ends the world for somebody.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. So The Push is about having somebody, rather manipulating somebody to willingly kill a man.
Commit murder,
Commit murder by pushing them off, by pushing a man off
the ledge,
off a roof.
Yeah.
Can he just like create a scenario in which somebody, an innocent bystander, who has already, agreed to be on the show,
is left with no choice.
Is left with no choice. He's like, I just got to do it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. And inversely, he's done he's created a world in Apocalypse where he went through so many pains to literally like rig up the dude's TV,
everything,
rig up the radio at the cafe that he hangs out at, go to the BBC and talk to the radio presenters, and have them read fake scripts on this like select FM frequency that he's isolated.
Crazy.
To have explosions in the middle of the street and convince an entire street full of actors, cordon off an entire street and have actors drop dead.
He does that a lot.
He does.
He gets like 70, 80 actors at a time to kind of go with his plan.
And then go one step further and then have this person wake up in a hospital bed and full-blown zombie apocalypse.
My God.
And here's the best part. All of this stuff is not just to like with people, although that's hilarious to see.
No, there is an ulterior motive.
It is really good. It comes from a really good place, and that's kind of like what I guess first drew me to the guy, as opposed to just like general showman.
Yeah,
he does unlike your typical illusionist and whatnot, who would just make you go ooh and ah, and like, isn't this cool? And look at me, how awesome am I? There's the intention at the bottom of it, I think, is always, be aware of the fact that you can be manipulated and that conditioning is a thing that is incredibly powerful. Placebo is oftentimes more powerful than the medicine you take. Like his new one, Sacrifice, is about convincing somebody who is basically a racist.
Okay.
Somebody's a racist when they have to keep saying, but I'm not a racist, right? And he says that line a lot. He basically convinces somebody who has a huge self-admitted bias against non-white Americans to take a bullet for an illegal immigrant. Somebody who he believes is an illegal immigrant. And it's a
completely staged thing again?
Completely staged thing. It's an hour-long special. It's the new one. And it's completely staged across England and the United States. Took him 10 months to do.
Nice.
And
cross country, I love it.
Yeah, see, he's planned this.
He's a charmer, man.
Yeah,
he's too good.
He's working. He said he's working his way up to a Broadway special, and I really hope he gets it.
Wow,
that would be insane. He's done a lot of stuff on the stage.
Of course, Broadway is
the whole one to get.
Man, Miracles is like, it's easily like one of my favorites. Man, it was so good. Yeah.
But so yeah, he does things like and sacrifice without giving away too many spoilers. He does things like, tell the guy that he's implanting a microchip into his brain. And so he gets a doctor to like take a scalpel and like put a hole in the back of his neck and put a little thing in there.
Really?
But there's nothing in there.
And does he actually?
Yeah, he cuts the dude open.
Holy shit.
He puts the thing in there and then he gives him an app. And this really got me thinking. Like, so a lot of his stuff gets you thinking about stuff, but I thought that this was in 2018 and the way things are right now.
Mm-hmm.
This really got me thinking about the conditioning that we do to ourselves. So a big sort of MacGuffin for this episode is the fact that he interviewed 100 people, whittled it down to this one guy, and the guy had to be incredibly willing and incredibly honest about his own
debaggery.
Yeah, basically his own debaggery, sure. And so yeah, just be completely honest and upfront about everything that he has biases for and against.
Yeah.
And so Darren Brown tells him, I'm going to put this chip in you. It's going to make you automatically just embrace your inner strength and basically enable you to just overcome whatever you want to overcome.
Okay.
In a nutshell, right? And so he gives him an app on his phone, and it's just got pre-recorded speeches from Darren Brown being like, you can be whatever you want to be. That whole thing.
Yeah.
But the real point of the app is that, Darren says his flowery language, but then every couple of seconds there's this little like ringtone.
I knew it.
And that's it. That's all it is. That's all it is. And so there just comes a point. So leading up to him having to take the bullet for this man, the midpoint of the whole thing is he's got a test that he is responding well to this condition. Right?
Yeah.
So Darren literally picks him up and puts him on top of a giant cliff. And he mentioned in his interview that I have a fear of heights and I don't like water. So he's like, cool, I'll put him at a really tall place and above water. so he's standing on a bridge and he's like, hey, jump, why don't you? He's like, no. And then Darren pulls out his phone. He's like, now listen to this. And you hear the ringtone. He's like, oh shit, I gotta do it. I was just like, what? That's way too simple. But it's true.
I think he also picks people who are kind of like, they may not be the most strong-willed people also, right?
Yeah, he has to vet them like crazy. But
exactly, you have to find somebody who's very like doesn't think, has so much self-awareness, I think. Like that's the problem, I think, with where he does these things where he goes on the subway, I don't know, it's like a really short clip where he gets people to forget where they're going. He's like, where are you going? No, do you know where you're going? Do you know where you're going? Do you know where you're going? He'll just tell that to people and people are just like, and they forget. But sometimes he's like, hey, do you know where you're going? Do you know where you're going? You're going, where are you going? And then they'll be like, I'm just going to whatever, say the name. And he's like, all right, cool, so I'm working on you. And then he'll move off. But he does this to like people. And I don't think his method is like 100%, right? Like it'll work on like few people and who are not, I think, as concerned about the way they think. Like they just are. I don't know.
Presence of mind, I guess. Whatever.
It's not like something that is an active thought for them,
He's been doing the press circuit quite a bit this past week, publicizing for Sacrifice, and he was on the Joe Rogan podcast, which I love. And I sat and I watched the entire thing, and it was amazing just to hear that
like
conversation.
2 hours or something, right? Yeah, damn, I need to go.
And he had a really good section in it where he's talking about this entire concept of like, how do you choose the people you work with? Because like clearly you need to get, the way Joe puts it, is like you need to find the dumbass to do it to. You can't find somebody who's like hyper aware and you know, blah, blah, blah. He's like, well, yeah, exactly. But the thing is, he had a great anecdote about how he's been honing this craft since he was a kid. Because as you'd imagine, like if you just look at the guy and like listen to him speak for like 30 seconds, you can figure the guy was probably not like the coolest kid in school. He probably wasn't like, the captain of the football team kind of a thing. And so obviously he was very intimidated by those kind of people. And so
there's history there. You can
there's clearly history there of like subverting the alpha male in society and sort of like finding ways, how can I use what I have, which is an incredible skill set in his brain. How can I use that against other people? And he talks about this one anecdote where years ago, just randomly while he was still he was in college or like just a young man before he really got into this stuff, he was trying to hone the craft, and 3 a.m, he's confronted with some random drunk dude and his girlfriend, and he sees them coming down the street, and he can tell that this guy's looking for a fight, and he's like twice his size, and he's like, what am I going to do here? And now normally when in that situation, and I think we've all been in similar situations, whenever that happens, when somebody, especially if they're drunk and, or inebriated in some way, and they come up to you with an agenda to pick a fight with you.
Yeah.
And they say the classic line of like, hey, what are you looking at? Or, something like that. They ask you a question to intimidate you and to confront you and to get your attention and to hold your attention.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what do you say to something like that? Usually it's like, oh, nothing, like, I'm just doing my thing. Hey, man, like,
no, don't want any trouble, yeah.
Exactly. You respond usually with like the lowest pressure on them to say, you're right.
Yeah.
Everything's like, I submit. Like, you submit before you even begin the fight. So at the time, he said like his aha moment was when he just tried a line, which was something to the effect of, he says, the guy comes up to him and says, what are you looking at? And he says, I want to make sure I get this right. Darren says to him, the wall outside my house isn't that high, is it? He just flips it. He just comes back at him with something completely irrelevant, which makes the guy go on his back foot and go like, what? Wait, did I miss something?
Yeah.
Because especially if the guy is inebriated,
then
he doesn't know where he's coming from,
that's
right?
True.
And so if you just flip the switch on that, the next thing that ended up happening is the guy takes a step back, the girlfriend carries on because she's also drunk and doesn't know what's happening. Yeah. And then it's Darren with this other dude. And Darren realizes that he has the upper hand. He's now started the conversation instead.
Yeah.
And so he goes, the wall behind my house isn't that tall, is it? And the guy goes, I guess. I don't know. And then Darren continues the conversation, whatever he just rambles on about something.
Yeah.
Apparently, the night ended with Darren and the dude sitting on the side of the road with the guy like almost sobbing.
Oh my God.
Because he realized what's happening. Why am I talking to the stranger about these random things?
Yeah.
And
that's cool.
That's a cool guy.
He's awesome.
If you ask me, that's
cool.
pretty great.
But it seems like the most Darren Brown thing to happen ever. Like, there's no confrontation which I don't think he couldn't find a way out of. Like, he's just that kind of person. Yeah.
He's like a real Moriarty.
He's like a Houdini, man, but with words. All right, cool. So we're going to take a short break. We'll come back, talk about Darren Brown.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another week on the IVM Podcast Network. If you're not following us on social media, please make sure that you are. We are IVM Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I have a little bit of news for people. We are releasing a new version of our app, and as part of that, we're running a beta program. We have about 40 slots left for different users to participate in the beta program, and if you'd be interested in doing that, please go to our website, ivmpodcast.com/appbeta. That's ivmpodcast.com/appbeta. Over there, you'll find a form which will let you submit your email address to us, and we'll invite you into the beta. Again, it's a limited availability, so we're only going to be able to invite so many people, but if you're interested, please do subscribe. And this week on Cyrus Says, Cyrus talks to stand-up comedian Saurabh Mehta about moving from HR to comedy and positioning himself as the first giant stand-up comic. On Simplified this week, the guys talked to Atul Churamani of Magnasound about the golden age of indie pop in the 90s. On the season finale of the Kinetic Living podcast, Coach Urmi spoke to fellow NTC trainer Kunal Rajput, and they talk about kettlebell sports, powerlifting, and how his dad, a Mumbai-based bodybuilder, inspired him to pursue his fitness career. And starting November 19th, we have a very exciting project. We're starting our first history project with Anirudh Kanisetti. It's called Echoes of India. Please do catch it on the IVM Podcast app, website, or wherever you get your podcast from. And with that, let's continue on with your show.
Hey, we're back. We're talking about Darren Brown, mentalist and psychological illusionist. Do you believe in any of this stuff? I mean, like, do you believe... Obviously, there's a lot of stuff that, he's doing in terms of, like, it's not just, tricks and whatever, sleight of hand and all that. This is actual just conversations. A lot of it is NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, which he's done. I remember this one amazing thing, this is like my favorite Darren Brown anecdote, where it's this one clip with him and Simon Pegg. And Simon Pegg is there, and he's like one of the celebrities who's come to be, fooled by. And this is actually the thing, man. Like, sometimes it's like Simon Pegg. I don't think we know of any person who's well known to us as a celebrity smart guy, in that sense. This guy's a writer, he's a thinker, he's a smart guy. Anyway, he's in this one clip with him, and this is a really old ones, maybe early 2000s and stuff. And he asked Simon Pegg to write down on a piece of paper what he wants, what he always wanted. Like, what does he want right now? Maybe for Christmas or something like that. And Simon Pegg's like, cool. And he writes it down in a piece and he's like, cool, I'll fold it away. He doesn't look at it, he puts it in his pocket. And then he's just like, all right, cool. So I'm just going to talk to you about, and then he just starts talking to him about, when we're kids, we always want stuff. When it's Christmas and, there's da-da-da and all that stuff. And Simon Pegg's just like, yeah. He's just listening to him and stuff. And he's just like, all right, so Simon, tell me, what did you want? What did you always want as a kid? And he's like, or something like that. He's like, what do you always want? And Simon Pegg's like, a red BMX bike. And he's like, oh, all right, cool. So we have a sheet over here. If you want to just pull that sheet off, let's just see what's underneath it. And he pulls it off, and it's a red BMX bike.
Right.
And he's just like, I don't know how did you know that and stuff. And he's like, cool. And then he opens up the envelope, and he's like, I want you to see what you wrote just now, like literally a minute ago. And he opens it, and it says a brown leather jacket. And then they rewind the entire thing, and they show the entire conversation that he's had, but with subtitles, and how he's used the words red, B, M, or X somewhere in the and bike in the middle of the, like, and he seeded it like so cleverly, with just like NLP and stuff, and he just makes him say it like it's madness, man, because it's like Simon Pegg, and then he shows him this. It's like amazing clip. So here's my point. It's like, do you believe that there's more at work beyond what they show us with the camera and stuff like that? Like, and what more do you think is happening when it comes to like knowing these people, or like trying to find out how do you think they find out about these guys before they go into these like challenges and stuff, these like, for example, in the push and stuff like that? I don't know, do you believe like that this is
everything we're seeing?
Yeah,
I do,
because a lot of comments, if you see on all these clips, saying, oh, it's staged, not staged, but some of it is obviously like, I mean, we don't know, so I don't know about that, but like, what do you think? How much do you think of all these illusionists?
I think that's a totally different question. When you say all these illusionists, then I'd say I'm very skeptical of all these illusionists.
Correct.
But he is in a very, very small, tiny, infinitesimally small percentile of people that I do genuinely admire. So, for instance, with the push, it's hard to talk about the stuff without like spoiling a lot of it.
Yeah, that's true. Fair enough.
But so I
know.
You know what I'm getting at about the push, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the thing. A lot of the times when he does these shows, I won't refer to any of them in particular, but one of the moves, much like with what you just said, is after the punchline, after the final thing is done, you're like, oh, that was impressive. But as is the case with most good magicians, it's like, is this your card? Is rarely the last thing they do. Right? When you say like, oh, look, okay, pull out a card, now I'll find the card. That's not really what they were doing. They were actually going to tell you, I really know your social security number. You know what I mean? Like
the prestige of it, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so that element with Darren's stuff, especially with his non-stage shows, his scripted shows, which take months of prep, those oftentimes is done with a whole lot of failed experiments. And they show you the one that did work.
Yeah, fair enough, yeah.
And in a way, that kind of makes me appreciate it more, because the fallibility of what he's doing kind of makes the one victory that does work seem that much more impressive to me, because I can see like the techniques he's using are not infallible. They are not always going to be true, but they can be incredibly powerful to make people do ludicrous things, which on any given day they would never ever even dream of doing.
Right.
And the fact that like the only thing that's changed between the time of them being them regular selves and them becoming somebody that's going to murder a man, or somebody that's going to take a bullet for a man, or somebody that's going to whatever the hell, is these very random specific things which if we just walked into the room in the middle of the setup that happened at the push, or the setup that happened at any of these things, we wouldn't think anything of it. We just be like, oh, there's just it was just
situation,
a situation that occurred, and it's an interesting night, but it's not true. Like I would never think that anything of it, to the extent that this guy is working at, it was going down. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It seems very like a normal kind of. He takes like moments from the mundane.
Exactly. And that's what I'm getting at. Like so, like for instance, with Sacrifice, like with this phone thing, right? Like something as simple as a ringtone. What I was getting at with my point over there is basically that today I find myself, and I'm sure we all have this, like there are certain things that we do ritualistically which we have self-conditioned ourselves to. It's called habits and routines, right? But there are, so like we all have our morning routine, we all have our evening routine. We know that everybody from the age of like 12 and up, when they say I'm going to bed, that really means you're staring at your phone for the next hour, maybe more. You're looking at the same 3 apps probably for the next hour, maybe more. These are things that we are aware of. But if you think about it, I think we all have certain, rituals, for lack of a better word, for things that we consciously want to retain that special connection with.
Okay.
What I'm getting at with is like, for instance, something we talk about a lot. There's no such thing as a casual Star Wars viewing for me, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm going to watch a Star Wars movie, there has to be a certain...
There's a decorum.
There's got to be, there has to be a certain zenness about...
Yeah, you can't just watch a Star Wars.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's conditioning.
Yeah.
Right? The first time I watched a Star Wars movie, I was 7 years old and like in some random uncle's house in England whose name I still don't even know because it was just that random.
Yeah.
My parents were like, oh, he's bored, just watch the space movie. I was like, oh shit, this is one hell of a space movie.
This is only one thing that's going to change the rest of my life.
Yeah. And now, knowing what I know, I have chosen to consume this thing in a certain way and make sure that like, I'm not thinking about other things and that I'm free of distraction and whatnot.
Yeah.
And therefore, I now have a subversion to all things Star Wars. In that, sorry, not subversion, aversion to all things Star Wars when it comes to like general media. If I'm scrolling through and I see like Star Wars news and stuff, or if I see a trailer, I'm like, oh, yeah. I can't just
it requires
right?
something.
And so that's because of conditioning that I've done knowingly to a certain extent. But I'm sure that there are other things if I think long and hard, like the things that I've done to myself, which I don't really think about.
Yeah.
But it's just my routine, we call it.
Fair enough, yeah.
And if, you are more aware of these things, I feel like that it's just better for you in general because like you're just more conscious. It's mindfulness. It's awareness of your own self and like the little things that make up.
So you're saying that
life.
what Darren Brown is doing is that he's getting people to break out of their rituals or to
question their rituals.
To
just sort of like just know that every little tiny thing can really make a big impact on something completely irrelevant to it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Which just goes into it. And I think that like that whole thing of habits.
Yeah, he does that a lot. Like in this one special, Miracles, which is just like a regular stage show, which he just pulls people from the audience and stuff like that. I mean, like there's this one moment which is what everybody talks about from that show, where he says, where he starts to basically the whole thing is a satire on like evangelists and like basically those what do they call them? I can't remember. In like these really old school kind of churches where they perform miracle, like basically that miracle healing and faith healers, right?
Healers.
So faith healing. So he does this whole spoof on that, like a satire on it, but except he actually does it, right? He's like, so now with with Christ as my whatever witness, I will do these things, and he does it, and he's like, ask everybody in the audience to stand up, and he says, and now whatever pain you had, whatever pain you've been feeling in the last few years, I want you to magically just dispose of it, and he does this whole thing and the sound effect and everything, and he's like, whoever actually felt some difference in them right now, come on stage, and he brings these like lines of people come out there, right? And like they come on stage and he just looks at them, he's like, you had a problem in your knees, and she's like, yes, I had an accident a few years ago. I was like, and he's like, how do you feel now? She's just like, I feel like different. I feel like it's gone, like that weight I had is gone. He's like, cool, if you had that thing, please just sit down. And he talks to people, and it's like, there's one moment where he convinces people, like a guy that he can't read, like he's been using spectacles, he can see again. It's like insane. And so those moments which always kind of like just make me think, I was like, how is this possible, essentially? Because he's not doing any mentalism. He's literally speaking to somebody who's like 100 meters away, like, or whatever, it's really far away and stuff. And he's still doing those things. So those are the things that make me question this. But I'm not entirely, because this is what faith healers do. They get people to stand and stuff like that. It's just through the power of like freaking like will. Yeah, exactly, right? And they do that. And he's doing it. But he's just, how much of a skeptic he is towards, it's crazy how he hates, like...
He's talked about this at length. There are a lot of interviews of him talking about faith healing because he's been, obviously, as you can imagine, doing the stuff he's done, he's got a lot of flack.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of flack from critics and haters who he's eventually, counter-argued with and won the case being like, no, it's not as crazy as you think it is because you're the freak, you're panicking before you even see my entire show.
Yes.
But... Yeah, I think when he's talked about faith healers, what they tend to do because of this whole using willpower, right? They make it seem that your lack of dedication and commitment to faith and therefore your own self is what's holding you back.
Correct.
Which is not inaccurate because we all need self-confidence to do things.
Correct, yes.
However,
absolutely.
what Darren does really well, at the end of his shows, even though his show might be, the 80% talking about one aspect of these different elements, with speaking of be it faith, be it will, be it placebo effects, whatever it is. At the end of it, he'll remind you that that is just one element of what you need in order to like survive life, right? Like you can't live your life saying like, when he talks about people that are successful and people that are winners in life, a lot of times whenever we read books and autobiographies and people being interviewed about like how did you make it, what did you do to like get successful, they all say dedication, hard work, believe in myself. I'm like, cool. That's equally true for the fruit seller in Kolaba.
Correct, yes.
He's also
made it.
He's made it.
Yeah.
No, he's not made it, but he's doing the exact same thing. He's believing in himself. He's working really hard. He's putting the time in. However, circumstance plays a huge factor, and so does a hell of a lot of other things.
Yeah, luck.
Right?
So many
and
things.
Here's the thing that faith healers will do to counteract everything they're talking about. They will make you feel bad if at some point the guy that could miraculously read 6 months down the line suddenly can't read, and he goes to the faith healer will say, "Oh,
the devil's
because
at work."
No, it's not the devil at work. It's because you lost your faith, or like your dedication has weakened.
Yes, exactly.
And so then it's all on you again. It's like no, there are several things happening at play. Yeah. But so what he does is like I think a really good contemporary of his in a slight tangent is Penn and Teller.
Yeah.
Have you seen much of that stuff?
I've only seen the Fool Me shows.
Fool Us.
Fool Us, yeah.
I adore Penn and Teller. Yeah. And they kind of do a similar thing of, most magicians will get off on telling you, here's the card, you didn't think it was going to be there, haha, isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
It's like, yes, but we all know it's not real, right?
Yeah.
So the real magic is knowing that it's not real and seeing the dexterity with which one can do that.
You want to be fooled.
And when you're saying you're being fooled like how watching, that amazing concert pianist play is being fooled. Because you're mesmerized. Like, how are you doing that? Well, she did it because she's really dedicated.
Yeah.
She put a lot of time into it. She studied up, la 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 la.
It's the exact same thing.
It's the exact same thing, except that with magic, the actual execution
is
performance
art, man. That's
literally that. And so, Darren does a really good thing of calling himself an illusionist and a mentalist, and he's like, yeah, I'll read your mind or whatever, but like,
a lot of it is hard work and belief.
99.9% of it is hard work and, just like doing your research and knowing how to play to the camera and knowing how to like do all that. So like, if you just look up interviews with Darren Brown, I think they're equally as interesting as his shows, because he debunks a lot of the things which make you a skeptic of his technique. He's like, you're absolutely right.
I do appreciate that about him, man. Like, I like that he's very honest about, I mean, he's not, obviously the whole magician's code, don't give away your tricks and stuff. But he does speak a lot about what he is doing. I mean, just because he's telling you what he's doing doesn't mean you can do it. It just means that this is how he plans to do it, or this is how it works. Like, you have to have the skill to be able to talk to people in a certain way that he does.
Right.
And that's what I really love about him, that there's a certain kind of, how do I put it? It's like honesty, but like if honesty was a production on stage, and like, and done really well. It's like, I don't know why Billy Joel's in my head, but like, it feels like that. I think it's because of the song. But it feels like, even if you take like a great piece of art and strip it down to its roots, it's still really like, it can still win, people over, because it's so well crafted and so well made. I think that's the specialty of Darren Brown, that he's such a good illusionist. Obviously, he's got all these skills, but the way he kind of presents it in this really no nonsense kind of, but like almost like, I don't know. There's less to do with, fireworks and pyrotechnics, and it's more about like the real kind of art of, speaking to people and telling them that they can do things that they can't before. So I think that's what's really awesome about him. Yeah.
Last thing I'll say is just that a small little thing from this new Sacrifice show, without giving too much away. Like we said, the premise is about convincing a man who has clear biases against people from other races to take a bullet for one of them, right? But in the middle of it, there's this beautifully poignant moment where he gets the subject, to sit in a room across the table from a Hispanic gentleman, I think. Just some random guy that Darren has found who's of the same ethnicity of the guy who's going to end up having to save. And of course, this is the guy that has like the chip in him. So he's like incredibly, he's very much on the hook, right?
Yeah.
Like, so like Darren's got him in his pocket. But this experiment is, apparently it's a real thing, to just make two people sit in a chair from across each other for 4 minutes, say nothing, and just look at each other's eyes and do nothing but that. That's intense, right? And the beautifully poignant thing about it was that after like trying a couple of experiments with the guy, some worked, some didn't, and therefore Darren like unearths more truths about the guy and like sees, you know, where he's won him over, where he still has to fight for him. When he just makes the guy sit across from somebody from that race that he doesn't like, or somebody that, you know, clearly doesn't care much for, the dude just breaks down. Because he's like, well, shit. I mean, like, it's easy to, you know, like...
Good one, Darren. That's a good one.
Because, like, in his pre-interviews, like, you see it, the guy, like, pretty much says straight up, he's like, I'm not a racist, but, I think that these guys are bad people and they're stealing our jobs and blah, 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 blah. I feel very unsafe and I think they should get out and blah, 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 but I'm not a racist.
Also very topical.
Yeah.
I
mean,
that's what makes
This is a... Yeah.
Of course.
He's not an idiot. But, yeah, I mean, that's just brilliant. If you take somebody like that who has that kind of, you know, mental block in his head and do nothing.
Just make all of them do it.
Just make them sit. Just sit down and look at the guy and then tell me how you feel.
Tell me,
Damn.
Hardcore.
Like, that was insane. I was like, really? It's just that simple?
Man. I wish it was, but yeah.
I wish it could be.
I wish it could be, yeah. Ah, awesome, man. Darren Brown is a star. Please watch him. Please watch his specials. I don't know how we haven't spoken about this guy before, but yeah, he's an excellent guy. He's put in the hours, man.
Yeah,
he's been doing it for so many years, and you can tell by his hairstyle what phases he's going through in life, and he's been doing it from like the early 2000s. That's when at least we caught on to him. Yeah, check out. There's a lot of stuff. He's got a great YouTube channel.
Fun fact. Yeah, he has a great YouTube channel if you can access it. If any of our listeners are in Europe, then you probably have access to everything.
Yeah.
But fun fact, since 2004, he's been the patron of the Parrot Zoo Trust in Friskney, Lincolnshire.
Nice.
He says, I'm a big fan of parrots. I think they're fascinating creatures. Many of them live for longer than us humans, and it's interesting to me the way that they learn to mimic human voices, even though they don't really comprehend what they're saying.
Yeah.
That's what he does for fun.
That's brilliant. I mean, he must have some hobbies, surely. He must be like sitting somewhere in a room trying to convince a parrot.
A bunch of parrots.
Convince a parrot that he can... I don't know, something.
Do you think he's staring at a parrot for 4 minutes at a time and like...
breaking down after
Can I make you break?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
Paul, you want to cry?
All right. So let us know what you think about Darren Brown if you haven't seen, or if you know any other illusionists who have really impressed you and we should talk about. Let us know. Contact geekfruit@gmail.com is our email address, and you can find us on all social media at geekfruithq on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Cool. Yeah, that's all we have to say
About that.
Yeah. Bye, Jishnu.
Yeah. It's IVM here, let's go. We the IVM kids on the block over here. Just to talk, taking a break from producing all day. Coming on this podcast cause we got stuff to say. IVM Daily is the name of the show. Monday to Friday, we ready to go. Talking about stuff in our head. We might even talk about our favorite bread. Signing out, it's IVM here, the podcast network that's in your ear.
Catch IVM Daily, Monday to Friday on the IVM Podcast app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Do you have a night routine? Well, everyone has one. And the to-do list usually looks like this. Brush your teeth, set that alarm, get into your pajamas, and switch off those screens. But here's one more to add to that list. Tune into the Positively Unlimited podcast for a dose of positive action and tips on how to build powerful mindsets. Episodes out every Monday on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you tune into podcasts.